Hey y'all. Okay, we're doing it again. Week 2 of Foundations of Human Sexuality. Raw reflections. I need to quit rocking and bopping, control myself. But I can't help it. I'm excited. Um, so, once again, like I said, this is Raw Reflections. I'm Keaton Wyndham. And my goal here is to just reflect week by week as a Southern evangelical conservative Christian, am going through a master's program in a liberal state in human sexuality with an emphasis in sex therapy. So, a conservative and woke spaces. And I know lots of people don't find themselves in this situation, so I want to take y'all along for the ride. And, excuse me, for week 2 in my Foundations of Sexuality class, we tackled research, which, full disclosure, I was not excited about research. I love to read research and I love to quote and cite statistics all the time to help kind of bolster my arguments. My husband and I debate like crazy just because that's what we love to do. We are arguers, and he will say that is one of his favorite hobbies and that I am his favorite debater because he is bananas, to be clear. I mean, you have to be to work with junior high kids. Also, if my videos, my last 2 videos, this one and week 1, sound just heads and tails better than my first 2 videos, let me know. Although I'm not sure I want to hear that, because then that would mean that my husband is right. He was insistent on the fact that my audio was trash. In fact, his first feedback was, "Man, I love watching your videos. However, your audio is trash and you need a microphone." But he didn't want to let me borrow one of his. So let me see if I can touch it without it making tons of gross noise. So I did borrow one of his microphones, finally. He begrudgingly allowed me to take it. So, now that we've chased that rabbit. Week 2, hopefully you've seen my week 1 video. In week 2, kind of the same fare. We have the Q&A to go over, the discussion board, the current events journal, and the assignment. And so, the Q&A, my group was not a part of. It wasn't my turn to post. However, we can see other people post and we can see the professor's response to that. And some of the people weren't asking more like serious questions like I did. Some asked like funnier, like anecdotal questions, and there was someone in our class who I think is secretly more conservative like I am. And they asked our professor, so what is your favorite piece of misinformation or your favorite theory that Freud had about sex? And I want to take this time to give a disclosure that I do not intend to ever be gross on this channel and to be graphic, but we are going to use real terms and we're going to name the anatomically correct parts. So if that bothers you, then this next little 3 to 5 minutes is not for you. Terribly sorry. But my channel, not yours. So peace off. the professor responded to her and said that their favorite funny little thing that Freud had really influenced was the concept of an internal and external orgasm for women, and how that is actually not actually true more often than not. Because Freud, he had lots of weird theories about like sexual attraction to your mother at different parts in development. And I mean, he is not one that I look to for much like sex research. Kinsey is more that person, and we talked about the Kinsey Institute for week 1. But apparently Freud had this theory that ended up getting really highly perpetuated, even though it was incorrect and has been found to be incorrect, to the point that like people quote it out in society still to this day. It's one of those things that like everybody knows that, or like it's common knowledge, and it's apparently not. I mean, it's common for them to know this, but it's absolutely incorrect. So Freud had this theory where like if women can only achieve orgasm externally, then they are considered like sexually immature and just lesser than as females. And if they can achieve internal or orgasm through internal like penetrative stimulation, then they are sexually mature and are real women, and which has been debunked, but no one has really bothered to clarify it for people. I think I don't. It's common knowledge for me just because of like the sex research that I have done on my own before entering this program. And some of the women my age who I've spoken to know this, but I don't know how widespread this is. So I'm going to pretend like you guys have no former knowledge. So it was once thought that the clitoris was just a small part of the exterior vulva. But in actuality, the scientists and researchers have found that it is actually more of like a wishbone shape. And what you see from the outside is, if you have the wishbone, it's like sitting up at the very top. So like it's making a fork, and then the clitoris is at the very top. And so that seems to be the knowledge that we have learned since then. It's not like two separate pieces. But what we fail to like carry the thought out for is that even if internal stimulation is being done, it is the fact that you are internally stimulating the clitoris still. You're just stimulating like the inside like edges of that like wishbone. So it's all a clitoral orgasm. It's just, are you stimulating it from the exterior or the interior? And so I thought that was so fascinating. Like, out of all the sex research that I have done before now, like, I don't know how I missed that. So that was cool. I'm glad that I was looking into and listening to my classmates' questions for our professor. So that was for free, you guys. The discussion boards were about sex research, and honestly, I kind of tried to like pick and choose what I decided to do, because lots of the articles we were provided were about how not enough sex research is being done on LGBTQ people, on transgender people, on asexual or intersex people. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with what I plan to do after the fact. So I'm not going to speak to that. But what I could find out of our reading to discuss was the fact that people have a hard time volunteering for sex research. And the methods that researchers go to, it was either overt or like covert advertisements for sex research. And they were talking about the benefits and kind of the drawbacks of that. The benefits being that more people would answer the like advertisement or the call for, help in need of participants. But they were like, some people would get to the research survey or whatever, and they would find out that the psychology survey is asking some really personal sexual questions, and so they might feel misled. And I totally get that. Like, I don't want to be led to believe that you're taking me out for ice cream and you're taking me out for a salad because gross. And also the overt advertisement of like sex research, people don't like to talk about sex. Like, even outside of conservative Christian circles, that is kind of societally a taboo in the US. And they were finding that when they did like an overt call for participants in sex research, they were getting people who were more sexually free, or they were getting people more sexually experienced. So they were getting like the more liberal end of the spectrum, if that makes sense. And so it doesn't really make for a good sample size. And this is one of those times where I don't want to do sex research. I already said that. But sometimes I feel like, oh, maybe I should get into sex research, because I, as an evangelical Christian, could easily do research on other evangelical Christian atmospheres and groups, because I could explain to them, like, I know you have these misgivings. I know I would at least stand a better chance, if that makes sense, than like some liberal heifer walking in being like, hey, I want to learn about what you church people are up to in your bedroom. Because church people are not just going to tell you about that. But I wish that there was more research out there on evangelical Christians, because like, we deserve to be represented in the data and the research. And I hate that our like shame and embarrassment that's been embedded into the culture surrounding sex and into the religion, like the formal religion, has kept us from being represented, because I think our values are worth being represented. Like, we have no reason to be ashamed or embarrassed. And another thing that I saw that I chose to speak to in the discussion board was how some of the methodologies and the theories in relationship counseling and therapy can also be used in sex therapy. And that kind of felt like a no-brainer to me. I mean, duh. I have been saying for years, when people are like, oh my gosh, why do you want to be a sex therapist? I've had to explain to them that your relationship and sex are intertwined so thoroughly. Like, your relationship affects your sex life, and your sex life affects your relationship. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. And so, although I wasn't impressed with that data and I wasn't shocked by that, I had to talk about it in the discussion board because I needed enough words to write about. I have also kind of started to find my people, quote unquote. And it's interesting who I end up gravitating to, because we all seem to be like responding to each other's discussion boards. There is someone from the Middle East who obviously has more conservative values just because of their culture and where they grew up. And I have noticed the past 2 weeks that they have kind of been like skirting the issue of these more like woke liberal concepts like LGBTQ and things like that. And then there is someone who is a Muslim. Like, I can see them wearing the religiously and culturally appropriate attire in their student like picture on Canvas, and they are also talking about like the more conservative end of the spectrum. And so I'm like, okay, these are my people. I didn't think I was going to have so much in common ever with someone from the Middle East and someone who is a Muslim, but like I'm really finding a sort of safety net with them, which is so interesting. Like I love proving myself wrong. Like, because I never in a million years thought that I would find any sort of like common ground to this level and feel like this level of safety with someone who I feel like beforehand I thought was so different from me. But then there's also someone who grew up very religious and is a special education teacher of like high school age life skills students, and my background is in special ed, and so we jive really well, and we kind of are just all responding to each other's because we're not offending each other, and we are creating good conversation. And we actually had a really great back and forth about me and the person from the Middle East. They brought up the concept of ADHD and like, is that label really necessary? Is it not? And, you know, some of the potentially negative side effects of receiving that label. There's something called the labeling effect. And the labeling effect, essentially, in a simplified manner, means that once you get labeled, there's a high likelihood that you could start to like subconsciously take on more of the symptomology of that label and kind of almost like lean into it, so to say, and kind of become this stereotype and this caricature. And so I responded and said, you know, I understand the concept of the labeling effect. I myself am diagnosed with ADHD, and it might be the labeling effect to some extent, but I think it's a case-by-case basis, because you could just argue for the concept of masking as well, because I mask very highly at work because I want people to see me as competent and capable and professional, and so I like shove it all down and control myself whenever I'm in a meeting or doing an assessment or speaking with a parent. But when I'm with some of my work friends or when I am in a therapy session talking to kids, I'm not masking as hard. And so I'm being more of who I authentically am so that I can normalize being accepting of yourself with neurodivergence like ADHD, and showing my kids that that's okay. It's okay that you need to tap or fidget or make a noise or to stand up instead of sit down, or let's lay down and in the floor and have therapy. No big deal. Like, you can cope and come up with tools and skills to help yourself along the way. But that's not me being a different person. That's me being more of who I am. But other people, unfortunately, make the argument of like, you don't seem so ADHD, or like they try to argue that like people are turning it on and off, and it's really more so that they're suppressing it until they are in a safe space where they can then let it out. And so we kind of talked about that in the discussion board back and forth. And it, of course, led to the connection between ADHD and sex. And I shared an article with her. I actually shared a couple articles with her about how ADHD can actually affect your sex life because of the distractibility, the impulsivity, the sensory needs. There's a lot going on in neurodivergent minds with the executive dysfunction piece, and that piece affects every part of your life, so it's only natural that it follows you into the bedroom. And I will actually link those two articles that I sent the classmate in the description. I sent two because my favorite one that I feel like covers everything that I would want to cover is dated back to 2017. And me being a former hardcore like research, APA, citation type of girly, I am used to having to use more recently produced data. So I was like, here's this one from 2017 that I really love. But also, if you need research that's newer, here's this one from 2023 that's kind of saying the exact same thing, just not as well as the 2017 version. So that was good. It's the content, the class material is really enjoyable. Honestly, what I'm finding out is that my struggles are coming from these discussion boards where I'm having to like interact and like make sure that I'm not stepping on toes. And luckily it's not difficult for me, but I hope it doesn't get to a point later in these weeks. It's a 7-week class. I hope it doesn't get to a point before the class ends where I just cannot cope. So let's see. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. We did the Q&A, the discussion board. The current events journal, I wasn't thoroughly impressed with. It was like 5 things that we learned from the year 2024. And it was, honestly, the points that the writer made were opinions, and I did critique that in my analysis. Like, I expected the like header points that were numbered to like be more scientific and sound, but they were opinions that they then backed up with a lot of research and science and data. So they made up for it, but at first glance it did not look good for it. The first point was talking about how we needed better sex education, and I agree with that general concept, and how like 135 bills in spring of 2024 had been passed to extremely eliminate or eradicate sex education in public schools. And that is wild to me. But the reason they probably have that many is because the writer then followed up that little statistic with the fact that, like, kids need sex education about, like, LGBTQ concepts. And I was like, the bills in some part are probably blocking that, I'm sure. But I don't put it past some of these, like, Southern conservative states to be blocking sex ed altogether. And I'm sure it comes from the argument of, like, that is a topic that the parents should be in charge of, and, like, parents should be controlling and have a say in how their kid learns sex ed. And I would support that over school sex ed if I thought for 1 minute that parents were actually educating their kids on sex. And I do not believe that, because my parents didn't. So I do think that we need more sex education in schools. I just think nobody can agree on how to get it done. The second point, I believe, was about normalizing. It was about normalizing that the fact that bodies look different. And the writer shared a statistic about how plastic surgeons a quarter of plastic surgeons have received or have done some kind of consultation or have been asked about what's called a labiaplasty. And that is that women go in wanting a consult or going through with a surgery to cosmetically and unnecessarily alter their labia minora because they feel like it's too big, too small, the wrong color, the wrong shape, because they're looking up or seeing in movies or pictures. They think that there is one correct type of look for their body, and so women are feeling tremendous amounts of shame concerning the more sexual pieces of their body. And the writer was really just talking about a need for, like, body positivity and normalization of how things look different. And lots of books and literature, like whether it's for younger kids or teens or even us, like millennial and Gen X generations, lots of stuff that I've seen here lately is doing a good job of presenting that concept of, like, all bodies are good bodies, and all bodies are different, and that is okay. No one's body is the exact same. And I even love when summertime comes around and they say, all bodies are beach bodies. You have a bikini body when you put your body in a bikini. And I love that because just because it's more convenient to wear a two-piece, I myself have gotten into the, like, plus size, like, bikini game, and I call it my big girl bikini, and I don't care. I don't care for 1 second what anyone thinks about what I look like in a bikini. It is a modest bikini because I'm a modest, like, conservative person, but I mean, I am out at the swimming pool or the beach or whatever to spend time with my husband and to spend time with my child and to spend time with, more than likely, my sister-in-law is usually there, or, my siblings and my parents. Like, I'm not trying to become this sex object at the beach, but I also deserve to be comfortable, and a bikini does it. So, big girl bikini. happening. Let's see, what was the third point? I want to say the third point was, like I said, they got real dumb. Like, these points were real dumb, in my opinion. I know one of the points was about, they wanted to make it like breakthrough research. And I was like, no, it's pretty self-explanatory, friend. It was about senior citizens and the connection between like the quality of their relationship with their partner and the satisfaction of the sex. And I was like, you didn't describe senior citizens, you described the human experience. Like, I hope no one paid you for that thought. Because that's been pretty well known by researchers, even non-conservative, non-evangelical researchers have come to that conclusion. So you don't win any points. You don't get any praise. No brownie points. The one that I really spoke to, that I thought was the most interesting and probably that compelled me to write or use this article for my current events, is that the presence of AI in sex toys has gone up 25%. I know I used the 25% somewhere else too. That's just a common number, I guess. So the reason that the presence of AI has gone up 25% in sex toys and in sex in general, I think, is because developers have created this like long distance like AI sex toy that like connects to an app. So like if you and your partner are find yourself far away from each other, whether like you're on a work trip or y'all live far apart for whatever reason, they're two toys, like a male toy and a female toy, and then there's an app that you connect the toys to, and they can interact with each other while you are using them from long distances away. And I have watched videos, like demonstration videos, like where they're like holding the toy up and like one person and they like, someone touches the toy in this hand and it like makes the toy in this hand react. It's wild looking. I personally have never seen one like in person. That was dumb. But I have not seen one for myself, but the concept is just wildly interesting. I would be so fascinated to see one in person. Not fascinated enough to pay the price for one. Just if it was like at a store and I saw it, I would definitely give it a second and maybe a third look for science. But also they said that some people are using AI sex coaches. Y'all, can we just agree that we don't need to be using AI sex coaches? One of my husband's friends the other day got into an argument with ChatGPT, and I think he won the argument. And so if ChatGPT can't out-argue my husband's friends, then maybe don't go to them for sex advice, because they're not a person. How on God's green earth are they able to come up with a nuanced, complex answer that these questions might deserve? Like, I don't know. As far as counseling and mental health and the human condition is concerned, I wouldn't trust it to AI. And maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me like showing the effects of being a millennial. I mean, sometimes I still ask questions like, oh, how old is Tom Cruise? And I'm just like, oh, I guess I'll never know. And I totally forget that I have a computer in my back pocket. And it never occurs to me to be like, oh, well, you know who would know that is Google. And so maybe that's just me showing my age and like my glass ceiling for reliance on technology. But I would rather tell a human to their face what my sex issue is than to have them have a computer be all up in my business like that. I'm not into it. So that is my current events journal. Sorry, I was being a chatty Cathy. I can't remember what that 5th point was. Or maybe I'm gaslighting myself and there were only 4. Whatever. What I will do, how about this, is I will put the link in the description. That's what I'm going to do. For the article that I analyzed for my current events journal. Smart. Okay. The assignment that I had for this week was to reflect on my past sex education or lack thereof. And if you watch my week 1 video, I said I was going to do a separate video for my professional goals. And I think this was also such a big concept that I'm going to have to do a separate video for my past education, because these were like 2,000 word assignments. Like, it's a fully fleshed out thought, and I hate to be like clickbaiting you guys and like, go to the next video, you better watch the next one. Like, if you want the answer to this riddle, keep consuming the content. Like, that's not my vibe. But I don't think the next like week 3 assignment is going to be quite so weighty, and so I'll include it when it makes sense. But yeah, these first 2 were just so big that I can't. And I can't do that and keep my video relatively short. As short as I can for me, who talks incessantly. Something else I wanted to warn y'all about, I guess, is that I have had certain topics come up in my life here recently as I've been discussing this program and sex and things like that. There have been just funny little incidences and questions and concepts that have come up, but since they're not a part of my classes, I will create a separate playlist for them, and I'm thinking I'm going to call them side quests, which is what I normally kind of describe my little ADHD rabbit trails, because the dopamine demands to be chased, y'all. But I feel like the thoughts are worth recording for myself, so I will create a playlist called Side Quests, and they will still be sex or sexuality related, but they will not be in my main foundations of sexuality playlist for my class. Okay. Links in description. Any questions, comments, or concerns, then like the video. Comment if you hate it. If you would like further explanation on anything, I'm here. What else am I going to do? Okay. See you next time, guys.